Hey guys, I've been playing around in a weapon lab and I found this to be a good opportunity to give more unsolicited advice if you're interested in improving alongside me. I wouldn't doubt that some of you already are good enough at the game to know what I just learned about, but hopefully everyone will be able to walk away with something new about one of the weapons that they did not originally know about. Using these tips can either drastically improve your damage or boost your survivability, so that everyone is going to be able to improve with their weapon. So here are 2 tips to help you improve with every single one. Let's start with the greatsword. Normally, I'd say just learn the TCS setups, but I think that everyone will eventually learn all of them. Honestly, spending too much time fixated on landing TCS can be severely hurting your overall damage. So, for my first tip, this is going to be an alternative method to deal damage: jumping wide slash. On top of dealing respectable damage, you're going to be able to do this out of a tackle, so you can reposition your character to a much more favorable location, either out of danger, or to set up a TCS combo again by using Slinger Burst. The second tip that I have for the greatsword is to improve survivability. Whenever you tackle, and you feel like a jumping wide slash cannot put you out of danger, or you need to iframe with a roll, waiting for the roll out of the tackle can take a long time. Instead, use the side bash with the greatsword to do a quick swipe out of the tackle, which allows you to roll ever so slightly quicker, or you can Slinger Burst again here to use another TCS. If you're running maximum might, for whatever reason, this will also regenerate your stamina earlier than if you waited out the tackle. Next up is the sword and shield. Surprisingly, not enough people know about how powerful Perfect Rush is. The first 3 hits of Perfect Rush themselves can deal as much damage as a falling shield bash from the charged variant of the backstep. To really push damage, I encourage everyone to be greedy with their Perfect Rushes, and find as many opportunities as possible to use this attack rather than doing normal slashes. The second tip should provide a wonderful quality of life bonus for any Sword and Shield players, especially those who want to try a Perfect Rush spamming playstyle. Prior to using a dodge roll input, always hit the guard button first, just in case you are slightly late on the dodge input. This should come out very naturally for a lot of Sword and Shield players, as they are likely using this strategy to unsheath and to roll immediately to set themselves up to punish monster attacks. You're also able to forego the roll and go straight into the backstep this way, as guarding immediately pulls out your weapon, and backstep can be used while shielding. Moving on to the dual blades. The dual blades are a relatively easy weapon to pick up, as most players can do 90% of the content by just pressing buttons. For players who are interested in doing solo runs, players are able to tenderize monsters by going into demon mode, then using the secondary attack 3 times, then hitting the slinger attack. This attack is fast, provides a good chunk of damage, as well as providing players with a tenderize, increasing damage uptime while giving utility. Second tip for dual blades players who are having trouble repositioning: try using the slinger evade mechanic, which has some iframes, but shines in being able to use out of most attacks to quickly reposition yourself out of very deadly mechanics. As such, I recommend dual blades players pick up some stones just to have the mechanic on hand and ready to use. The longsword is relatively well known, since it is one of the most popular weapons in Monster Hunter. There is a boundless knowledge of longsword tips, so pretty much anything I say is likely already on the internet somewhere. My first tip is related to the Spirit Helmbreaker. A lot of players know about the move and the setup, but afterwards most players are left sitting around as the monster they are fighting performs their next move. Longsword players are actually able to foresight slash out of Superior Helmbreaker, allowing them to regain the red gauge if timed correctly. The second tip for longsword users is about the EI Spirit Slash. The EI Spirit Slash has less ending lag if your sword has spirit levels. The higher the level, the less ending lag. Spirit gauge will not affect that landing lag. Additionally, using the Spirit Helmbreaker out of the EI Spirit Slash will actually make the startup much faster. Next, let's talk about the Insect Glaive. If players are looking to improve their Insect Glaive damage, the first tip I have is to embrace the Grounded Insect Glaive. Grounded Insect Glaive combos deal much more damage, and the majority of time an Insect Glaive player deals damage should be on the ground, rather than in the air. Sure, being in the air allows Insect Glaive players to avoid a lot of damage, but in return the damage output as a result is absolutely abysmal. Personally, I tend to use the downward thrust, aiming to pierce a weak spot on the head for the kinsect damage, and then using the ground-based punishes until I need to avoid another hit. Then repeat. The second tip I have for Insect Glaive will increase their essence uptime, thus drastically increase their damage output. Starting out with only the red and white essences, players should have all the core components to deal maximum damage and have maximum survivability. When the essences begin flashing, indicating they are expiring soon, taking in an orange essence will refresh the timer, allowing players to stay powered up for longer during the fight. Following the Insect Glaive, I want to talk a little about the Hunting Horn. As some of you may know, I am not exactly the best horn player. However, I know there is a lot of team play minded folks out there, hoping to duke their way through all the hunts. Therefore, my first tip for Hunting Horn players who want to do more support-oriented playstyle is to use the status horns from mhwib. The Saphi horns can be customized to have the same melodies as the Fatalis horn, giving players the same attack bonus without the negative affinity in case they want to run critical status. Aside from that, players who are feeling like the horn keeps them stationary for too long should look into using the back input plus any note. This can follow up any attack. It will add the same note, but with a shorter animation that does a little bit of damage. This can also be used to get some extra spins out during punishes, or to queue up notes in a pinch. For the next weapon, I want to talk about the hammer. Sometimes, you'll end up on a slope while approaching a downed monster. This can happen often, as the hammer's sliding attack is fast, hits hard, and is easy to accomplish. However, doing a sliding attack can end up causing players to overshoot, miss, and then miss out on potentially massive damage. Instead, players are able to slide down towards the monster before using the power charge in order to cancel the slide. Then, players will be able to start wailing on the head with a big bang attack or more damage instead. Another hammer tip is for building the weapon. Investing too heavily into the slugger decoration will not guarantee additional KOs. Each time that a monster receives a stun, their stun threshold will increase, and most of the time it will be more than double, meaning that each subsequent KO becomes much harder to achieve. Unless you have multiple weapons dealing non-stop stun damage, it is rare that over-investing into the slugger decoration will result in more KOs. Instead, put the extra points into the part breaker decoration, allowing players to deal more part damage, and putting that damage instead towards flinches and part breaks for more openings. Alright guys, the next weapon is the Freedom Dispenser. The less patriotic of you will refer to this weapon as a gun lance. Both of these tips will be heavily oriented towards the shelling playstyle, as I find the slap lance playstyle is very cut and dry. When players load the Wormstake Blast with slinger ammo to attach to the monster, different ammo types will affect the duration which the stick stays attached. Using red pits and stones will make the attachment last around 2 minutes, if loaded while at full capacity without slinger capacity skills, while piercing pods, bomb pods, and thorn pods will make the stake last 5 minutes under the same conditions. If playing on a large map, players should memorize where the important slinger ammos are, as well as estimate how long each hunt takes so they can minimize reapplications. Secondly, players are able to infinitely loop shell bursts by using a normal attack after a full burst, doing a quick reload, and then doing another slap into full burst. This is a very efficient and strong way to repeatedly proc the Wormstake explosion, and its effects are only amplified while working with multiple gun lance users. Now, let's talk about the lance. My tip for lance is to play gun lance. I'm joking. If you have played the lance, you may recall that drawing the weapon takes a disgustingly long time. Therefore, my first tip will be a great quality of life, as well as a method for gun lance players to start off a fight strong. To avoid the unsheathing animation, start from a high ground and use the charge attack while mid-air. This will automatically unsheath your weapon, as well as begin building up speed for a charge, so that you can start off the hunt with a big burst of damage. Just don't miss the final thrust. The second tip should help any lance players who need to reposition while guarding. Normally, hitting the dash while guarding will turn the character, potentially exposing themselves to damage. However, pressing the slinger button while guarding will cause the direction that the character is facing to lock, allowing them to reposition without exposing their sweet booty cheeks. Alright, the next weapon is the Charge Blade. The Charge Blade's main damage focus comes from using up its charges. This tip will help all the Savage Axe enjoyers get more efficient file usage so that they can chainsaw the monster more. Most players know that you're able to load files while in Savage Axe form to extend its duration. However, most players do not know that loading files also resets the timer on the file that is currently being expended. Therefore, by loading files when the last one is about to expire, can essentially add up to 12 extra seconds on your files, allowing players to stay in their chainsaw form for longer without the need for Focus 3. This is also a reason why you would not actually require red files to load when you're playing the Savage Axe form. The second tip is for all the guard point enjoyers. Talking guard point gives a huge damage boost for Charge Blade players, giving them additional damage via offensive guard. By using a sword charge, followed immediately by an axe transition, players are able to double the duration of the guard point window, giving players around 2 seconds of guard point, where any attack made during that time can trigger the offensive guard, as well as any counters associated with the guard point. The switch axe is one of my least used weapons, so I'm not too sure what counts as common knowledge, and what will push the player's gameplay to the next level. Having stated my disclaimer, the first thing I want to talk about is the use of zero-sum discharge. While players are able to use this attack at almost any time for easy damage, it is not the highest damage output for switch axes. This is even more exacerbated in multiplayer, where attacks in sword mode, which hits allies, add additional damage to the swing. For punish windows, it is much better to continuously swing the sword while grouped with the party, and only finish off with a zero-sum discharge as you leave the range of your allies. The second tip for switch axe players should help players that are feeling like switch axe is lacking in mobility, or if you feel like you're being caught too often. For players who are looking to transition quickly from the immobile sword mode to the more mobile axe form, players can do a backwards morph slash to move out of range of attacks. If you need to avoid multiple attacks, players can do a small hop, followed by a dodge roll into a morph slash to quickly transition back into axe mode. Hopefully, these methods help create a more mobile switch axe playstyle, so I can finally meet some switch axe players that don't just hit the ZSD non-stop. Now then, on to the range weapons. The first tip is going to be for sticky light bowgun users. When crafting ammo, players should craft their sticky ammo while there is an odd number of sticky ammo remaining, because each craft of sticky ammo gives 2 ammo. Crafting while at an even number, or after the ammo has run out, will cause the player to lose out on a sticky ammo each craft. I'd admit, I am not good at keeping track of this myself, especially in the heat of combat, but doing so and squeezing out that extra sticky shot is how you're able to get the most out of the sticky playstyle without needing to farcaster back to camp to change sets. The next tip is for players who are looking to min-max their damage. Even though light bowguns have little burst damage, they have a great attack to punish immobile targets using the Wyvern Blast. Players should aim to never have the Wyvern Blast full, if possible, and should look for windows to place down Wyvern Blast, followed by a quick melee attack to proc the strong explosion from the Wyvern Blast, dealing a large burst of damage on an otherwise non-burst weapon. For heavy bowgun players, my first tip is to get used to using the special scope. The special scope provides a large damage bonus when applied, and can mean the difference between putting out the damage that is on par with a melee weapon, or damage that can double or even triple the damage of melee players. By combining the special scope with a close range up custom mod, and then adjusting the special scope, players can get up close and personal with any ammo type, both pierce and spread, and perpetually stunlock almost any monster until they die. The second tip for heavy bowgun users is to add in the earplugs decoration to your build. Players can maximize their DPS by completely ignoring monster roars, instead pumping their massive damage output into the head or any other weak spot during the entire animation. Moving on to the final weapon, the bow. The bow has a very cut and dry combo, using the charge dash, normal shot, and power shot damage loop for main damage outputs. Therefore, I think the best first tip is how to quickly gain maximum bow charge while preserving coatings. Starting from Iceborne, players can quickly gain max bow charges to start this loop by using quick shot, dash, normal shot, then power shot. Prior to Iceborne, this was too inefficient for stamina usage, but the introduction of the Fatalis armor, as well as ready access to Stamina Surge. Allows players to liberally expend stamina during damage windows. The second tip for bow players is to count the coatings for status attacks. By keeping the status application near the threshold, players can quickly reach that threshold on demand to chain crowd control effects, giving your team additional time to deal damage without interrupting KOs and topples. And those are 2 tips to improve with every single weapon. I hope that everyone walked away with a new tidbit of knowledge. Maybe it was for your weapon, maybe it was not. If you have a tip that you think people should know about, make sure you drop it in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.